Hey guys, in today's video we're going to be going over the basics of what we call extended chords. So basically extended chords are chords that have notes that go past the octave. So if we look at a C major scale that spans over 2 octaves here, usually we're going to make chords with the 1, 3, 5, and 7 of that scale. And if we keep going and we skip over notes here, we're going to end up skipping over C and going to D. We call that the 9th, F is the 11th, and A is the 13th. So basically now we've covered every single note of the scale by playing every other note of the scale. So meaning if we were to start over at C again, we would end up on 1. So now we've done one round of 2 octaves. So basically what we're looking at here, we call this the 1, the 3, the 5, the 7, and then D is the 9, F is the 11, and A is the 13th. So if we have a chord that we call a 9 chord, an 11 chord, or a 13 chord, these are the notes that we're referring to in the scale. So in the key of C, D is the 9, F is the 11, A is the 13th. Now we could also think that if C is 1, D is 2, F is 4, and A is 6, right? But past the octave, we're going to think of this as the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th. So basically we have C, E, G, B, and D right here, and those are all natural notes from the key of C major, okay? So this chord that comes out of that, we call this C major 9. Technically that is a major 7 with a 9 on it, but if we say C major 9, we already know that it has a major 7th in it, okay? As opposed to C9, which would have a B flat, because it would be from a dominant chord, just like a C7. This would equal just a regular C9 chord, because it's like C7 with a 9 on it, so we just call it C9. So if we see a C9 chord, we automatically know that there's going to be a flat 7 in that chord. If we see C major 9, we know there's going to be a natural 7th in that chord. This would be a C minor 9 chord, because basically you have a minor 7 chord, minor triad with a flat 7, then you're going to add the 9th to it, which is D, so C minor 9. So C9 has a flat 7, major 9's got a natural 7th, C minor 9 has a flat 7th, okay? However, we have something that we call an add 9 chord, which does not have a 7th in it for sure. So for example, if we take a C9 chord here, and I erase the B flat, now what we have is C add 9. So you will see this chord often in guitar music especially, and basically what it means is it's a C chord, C major, that has a 9 on it, but there's no flat 7 in the chord. So the basic concept is if you call a chord an add 9 chord, it specifically means there is no flat 7 in that chord. Now another common thing you might see is a dominant chord that has an altered 9th in it, like a flat 9 or a sharp 9. So for example, if we had a C7 chord like this, C, E, G with a B flat, then we had a D flat, that would be a flat 9, okay? So the way we would write that is we would still write the 7 in that case and then write flat 9. So C7 flat 9. Okay, we have a dominant 7 with a flat 9. And we could also go the same route if we make it a sharp 9. So we would have a C7, this part of the chord, and then you add the sharp 9 to that as well. The sharp 9 is the D sharp. Flat 9 is the D flat. So these are common alterations of a dominant 7 chord. You might also see them to have an altered 5th as well. We call those altered chords. So you could have a C7 flat 5 flat 9, or a C7 sharp 5 flat 9. So G would be flat or sharp depending, or a C7 flat 5 sharp 9, or a C7 sharp 5 sharp 9. Those are all possibilities. We call those altered chords. So the dominant 7 chords tend to have the most alterations with them that are commonly used. So with 11 chords, we're basically going to apply the same concept we did with the 9 chords, but we're going to add the 11th on top of it, okay? Now there's some more interesting things to know about 11 chords, and if we're doing a major chord with an 11, we're basically going to use a sharp 11 most of the time, as opposed to if we use a minor chord with the 11, we're usually going to use the regular, natural 11th, okay? So basically, we just kind of want to understand how they're constructed first before we understand which ones are the most useful. So basically, if we take C, we have every other note of the C major scale except for A. So we basically have the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, okay? Now, we could call this C major 7 with an 11 on it. We could call this more commonly C major 7 with a sharp 11 if we made the F sharp. So that would be a useful chord if we did C major 7, sharp 11. You will see that chord being used, okay? So now this would just become C7 sharp 11, okay? Or if we took the F and made it natural, we could call this C11, okay? Just like a C9 chord, it would have a flat 7 in it if we just called it C11. Now for a C minor 11 chord, we would just do C, E flat, G. We'd have a B flat, because we don't want a minor major 7, it's just a minor 7 chord basically. We have our ninth, and then we would have our F. This would equal C minor 11. So this chord is also very useful. This is basically a minor 9 with an 11 on it, okay? This is basically a C9 with the 11 added as well. Now, of course, on this one, like I talked about, we can also alter it to make it a sharp 11. We're no longer going to keep it written like this because it gets confusing to put sharp 11 on there. So the way we write that chord would be C7 sharp 11, okay? C dominant chord with a sharp 11 on it. Even though these chords don't say a 9, since they have the 11th, the 9 is implied, but especially on guitar, when we're only playing 4 notes of that chord, we might omit the 9 or the 5th or a different note depending on what was important in that chord. And we definitely need to play the 11th if we're going to call it an 11 chord. But these are all the notes that make up the chord. So if we want to think of every note that would fit into that chord, you just think of the scale, every other single note like that. So we're taking a dominant chord or a minor 7 chord, and we're either adding a sharp 11 to the dominant or a natural 11 to the minor chord. And the same thing basically applies to the 13th chord. So if we added the A to that, we could call this chord C13 or C13 sharp 11 if we wanted to add that in the parentheses after it. Or we could play it as a regular 11th in there, but this would be a lot of notes. The E and the F would conflict with each other a little bit. So basically, what you start to see is we start to omit notes. So on the guitar, we could make this chord sound like a C13 with only 4 notes. So basically, we have to omit the 11th, the 9th, and the 5th. So with just these 4 notes, we can make the sound of a C13 chord. So to do a C13 chord on the guitar with only 4 notes, we're going to start with our root note on C, flat 7, which is B flat, then we're going to do E, our 3rd, and then we're going to have A, which is our 13th. So that gives us a C13 chord. Okay? So we have C, B flat, E, and then A. So just because a chord can have the 5th, the 9th, and the 11th in it before the 13th, it doesn't mean it necessarily has to have the sound characteristics of that chord. So the 3rd and the 7th of any chord is usually very important for us to understand really what's going on in that chord. We can take out the 5th quite often, and we can also take out some of these other extensions if we're just going for the sound of highlighting the A in this chord, which makes it a C13. So for a C minor 13 chord, conceivably, we could leave all these same notes in, giving us our minor 9 or the minor 11, now the minor 13. Okay, and so basically we can make any kind of extended chord going all the way up to either the 9 or all the way up to the 11th or also up to the 13th. Okay, and that gives us all the different combinations of 9th chords, 11th chords, or 13th chords. Okay, now based on the alterations of the chord or the triad or the 7th chord before it, we give it a different name. So for example, if we had these notes here all the way up to the 9, we would call that C major 9 because the 7th is a major 7th. Okay, so if we were to alter the 7th to make it a flat 7, we would just have regular C9 or C dominant with a 9, you know. So basically, all those chords can be constructed all the way up to the 13th with all the different kinds of variations going on with the inner notes as well. However, I think the most important thing to understand about extended chords is that they actually fall naturally in certain scales and modes like melodic minor, harmonic minor, and also harmonic major. And basically, we're going to find when we study those scales that we're going to find some of these chords exist diatonically in those scales. For example, we will see a major 7 sharp 11 chord, or for example, an altered dominant chord, so like a sharp 9 flat 9, or a sharp 5 flat 5, chords like that we're going to see used diatonically in some of these modes. So then we're going to learn which ones are the most useful that we're going to see often in songwriting.